Welcome to Equilibrium Live, and this is episode 8. I'm your host, Sarah Téibo, and today I'm joined by some esteemed guests. We're going to be talking about the topic blurring the lines between Christian, gospel, and mainstream music. Why, how, and what really does this mean? I've got on today's panel some really great guys. I've known some of them for really long and some for not so long, but in my eyes, they're all legends. Starting from the top, Triple O, who is an international recording artist, mobile award-winning rapper. He actually featured on my debut album, which actually got a mobile nomination as well. And do you know the funny thing is, during the week, I was checking if I'd emailed you the updates for today's session, and I was looking at my last email to you. It was the email that I sent you to collaborate on my project. That was the last time.
Serious?
Apparently,
and spoke by email.
No, because we talk all the time. So we're on the phone all the time. I don't need to email you for anything. So and then I read your response back, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad. I love to work with you. I love what G Kid does. I was like, oh my God, literally. And you didn't know me at the time. So it was such an honor. And you responded, and it was a really great track. And I still love the song till today. So we've got Triple O. We've also got WIZDOM. WIZDOM is one of the pioneering Christian hip hop artists in the UK. Like, he is the boss. If you do not know him, go check him out. And he used to be with the group called Green Jade, and they did phenomenal things back in the early 2000s. You need to check them out. We also have AYCE Music. I was saying to Triple O just before we came on, how do I describe AYCE? Literally, I said to Triple O, because you do so many things. And I know on Instagram you're called the Beat Junkie, but goodness me, that does not begin to describe who you are as a person, as a creative, as an artist, as a facilitator as well. I know you created the BBC proms at a point, and I remember when I watched that, I was like, God, please give me the chance to work with this guy one day, and I'm sure it's going to happen. This is not the answer; it's coming. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and for those who've come on Facebook and YouTube, you know the drill. Please share the link. Let people know that we're here, that we're chatting. As usual, it's going to be interactive, so come with your questions. This particular topic tends to be quite heated, tends to sometimes be controversial as well when it comes to crossing over. And so we're going to dive straight into it. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves a bit more, because I've only scratched the surface, and also answer an icebreaker question for me. So there's two things I'm asking you to do now. Answer the icebreaker question and tell us a bit more about yourselves. So the icebreaker question is, if a movie was made about your life, what genre would it be, and who would play you? And I will start from the top, so I'm going to go with Triple O first.
No pressure. All right, cool. So first of all, introduction. Who am I? Hey guys, everyone watching. I go by the name of Triple O. I am an artist, rapper. Been making music for coming up to about 15-16 years. Gospel music for about 15-16 years. And it's been an amazing journey. I love it. The accolades are there and whatnot, but it's just about making music that glorifies God. That's the focal point there. If what genre you said? What genre would my life be?
Yeah, what genre would the movie be?
I guess it would be a Marvel movie. Yeah. It would be a Marvel movie. It would be there'll be some highs and some lows and some emotional movement points, but we have fun, and it's an ongoing saga. So that's why
that ongoing saga.
Yeah. Everything interconnects, and I'm intricately just kind of putting little bits and pieces, so that when you watch my life back, you're like, oh, this is how we got to the end game. So yeah.
And who would play you?
Who would play me?
Yeah.
I have a feeling everybody's going to say Idris Elba, but no, I'm not going to say Idris Elba.
That's a good choice.
Who will play me?
All
right, let me just say Idris Elba.
Yeah, that's not a bad choice at all. I'm sure I watched that movie for free. Yeah, definitely. And WIZDOM, what's a bit more about yourself, and also if a movie was made about your life, what genre would it be, and who would play you?
I think so. Introducing myself, WIZDOM. I'm one of the members of Green Jade. We're a hip hop group that started in the mid-90s. We kind of came to faith as what I suppose you would call a revival, loosely a gang based in Clapham, of which 25 members, of which 14 of us gave our lives to Christ, which included people like Jahazel, Full Immersion, and a few others. And then sort of went on to work heavily within the gospel world, and then whilst also in the hip hop world, and then also moving into CCM and different places, and kind of ended up doing a lot of anti-gun crime schools work with a youth charity called XLP. And that was kind of our journey. I think we made about 4 albums. We were a big part of Zion Noise Collective. We toured Europe, we toured the States. Currently, which is quite funny, we're making a documentary about Green Jade, which AYCE is filming.
Well, you look at that.
So I actually had a meeting with AYCE earlier on this morning.
We didn't even mention this.
Well, you look at that. I'm definitely in the spirit, that's for sure.
Yeah, you're very much in the spirit. I think that's a documentary. If it was a film, I think it would be Lord of the Rings. Because I think there's definitely been some voyage and return and learning of stuff and going along with your fellowship and your friends, and then, you know, some people dropping off here and, you know, having to kind of fight to overcome certain things. Who would play me? Matt, who would play me? Jamie Foxx, maybe. A lot of energy after. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that would kind of work for me.
Interesting. Jamie Foxx in a kind of Lord of the Rings saga. I'd like to see that.
Come on. We would all love to see that. It was either that or going to be Samuel L. Jackson, but I don't think the world is ready for Samuel L. Jackson in Lord of the Rings.
No, I don't think so. Oh, that's really cool. How about you, AYCE?
All right, hey everyone.
Thank
I
you.
am AYCE, and I'm. It's funny you said you don't know how to describe me. I often don't know how to describe myself, to be honest. But I am. Look, I'm a creative director, and all that means to me is that, like, I do lots of different things, and whatever you need me for, I try my best to facilitate it. So most people know me initially as a musician, producer, writer, that kind of stuff. And they know me for my history with the London Community Gospel Choir, as well as all my kind of stuff in the mainstream world, working with like artists like Tiny Temper and Wretch and the Spice Girls, and like a broad range of artists. And then I guess in the last, say, 10 years, I moved more into other passions, like holding a camera, so photography, videography, as well as writing, arranging, music, all that kind of stuff. And I love sport as well. So yeah, I'm a licensed basketball referee and coach and all the rest of it. Yeah, so I do lots of stuff. But essentially, like, I just love being in a room. And I was saying something the other day, like, you may not need me to be in the room as a keyboard player because you're happy with your keyboard player, or you just want to use this guy. I'm happy to be in a room as a producer or the person videotaping the experience or shooting it. I just love to be in a room. Do you know what I mean? So whichever way you need me in a room, I'm happy to come in and facilitate it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's me. If there was a movie about my life, you've thrown me off with this one. I've never been asked this question before.
Good.
Marvel was definitely a good one, but I'll take it a little bit more left. It might be something like actually there's a little bit of Marvel in there. Something like a cross between Minority Report, The Matrix, and what's the one where they jump where they jump in between worlds?
Inception.
Ooh,
so
on a sci-fi level.
Exactly. And that's just mainly, I guess that's just because nothing is what it seems. I meet so many people, and it's funny, I was Wiz's I was working with Wiz on another project a few weeks ago, and his right-hand man, I just assumed that she knew who I was, but I had forgotten that she'd only ever met me behind a bunch of cameras. So she had absolutely no idea that I was a musician or creative director or anything else.
Yeah.
So I was just talking as if she knew. So I guess nothing is ever what it seems. So, and in that, you're going to get the drama and all the rest of it, and the love story and all the rest of it. So,
and the kissing before the explosion and all that. I'm like, get
Exactly.
out of there. What are you guys doing kissing?
Exactly. You're about to die. Brilliant. That's a great question.
Oh dear.
Who would play me?
Yeah.
I have no idea. It would have to be someone like an actor I respect. So I was going to say Michael B. Jordan, but I'd just be begging for the heartthrob thing. But it would probably be someone like Don Cheadle, like a respected actor like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's really cool. And this literally your answers have given us like a sneak preview, if you like, into what your lives are like, which is a lot of ups and downs, a lot of drama, but at the end, hopefully, a happy ending. So I think that's what it is, because all these movies, all these epics and sagas, in the end, they get the ring, they get the girl, whatever it is, they get the trophy. So yeah,
Definitely.
That's really brilliant. So we're talking about blurring the lines between Christian, gospel, and mainstream music. And I remember WIZDOM, when I spoke to you the first time about this topic, you were like, we have another underlying elephant in the room, which is within the Christian space, we have Christian music and gospel music. So I was wondering, before we even start taking the conversation out of the house, to kind of pick your brains on, given that you guys have been in the scene way longer than I have, and you've looked at it from the inside out and also from the outside in, to pick your brains on that sort of divide, or should I say distinction, between Christian and gospel music, and what your thoughts have been about it. Because I recently read an article where the headline was Maverick City blurs the line between Christian and gospel music, and I thought that was a great thing. But the fact that had to be a headline meant that there's always been that perception that they're two very distinct things. So I'd be quite keen to understand or to explore your view on that whole demarcation, if you like, between the two, before we even start crossing over into mainstream. I don't know who wants to go first.
If it's all right, I'll go first. I'm a part of the GMIA, the Gospel Music Industry Alliance, and we kind of work to get some sort of definition of what gospel was. So I'm going to read what that is, and it's basically the interpretation that we have is that UK gospel music is derived from the African, American, and Caribbean musical experience relating to the Christian faith, delivered by a wide range of industry creatives and practitioners, incorporating both the gospel genre and gospel message delivered overtly or by inspiration.
Right.
Believe me, we worked hard to get that definition.
That is very, very intense.
Yeah, because there's lots of moving parts to it, and I think Christian, whilst Green Jade were active, I used to make the joke that gospel means different things to different people. If I found to white Christians, it meant black Christian music. To black Christians, it meant all Christian music. And to non-Christians, it meant choirs. And as a rap group, we didn't fit very well into any of those. So I feel that gospel, as I said, is about, its essence for me is about the way it makes people feel. I think, and there is a soulfulness to it, whether that's rapped or whether it's sung. It's about the feeling. I think Christian music has moved more into just the worship of God, as in just about his person, just about his greatness, and that's what the center of Christian music is. Whereas gospel, I think, is more about soulfulness. It can be purely inspirational. It doesn't always necessarily have to have Jesus's name front and center within it, but it is that feeling. It is that capturing that essence of that soulful spirit of God is how I define the difference.
I can see a few questions I'm going to ask you on that, but I want to let everyone else respond and then I'll come back. So I don't know who wants to go next.
I find that really really interesting because I love that definition that WIZDOM gave and the way he just broke it down. One thing that came to mind, even as he was saying that, especially within like the sphere of rap music, gospel rap, if you want to call it that, as a genre, it's referred to as CHH, Christian hip hop. Exactly. So it's like, okay, so it's like, and then within that, you've got individuals who are doing very overtly Christ-centered, God-glorifying music, and then you have individuals who are very creative or a little bit more laid back with the way that they present their faith and the way they present their walk. And then you have the age-old back and forth of, are you a Christian rapper or are you a rapper who's a Christian? Which is where you're going to eventually. But everything just seems to sit underneath the umbrella of CHH, Christian hip hop. So it's like, is that gospel? Is it not gospel? So there's so much labels and all of these different things. And I'm just like, if we a lot of the times it's just semantics, and we spend so much time trying to label something to the outside world, especially, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but to those who are not in the Christian faith, it's all the same. If it comes like there was a period of time where you had Lecrae, the biggest Christian rapper in the world.
Yep.
And he made a conscious marketing and branding decision to kind of step back from the Christian label. So he was able to kind of integrate more so with non-faith-based artists and really try and make an impact in the world. But the reality is, no matter how far he tried to disassociate himself with that label, to the outside world, he will always be seen as the Christian rapper.
Yes.
No matter what kind of marketing, unless he did a complete 180 and started cursing and changed the subject matter completely, he will always be seen to the world as a Christian rapper. So I think sometimes within the Christian faith, we spend so much time labeling stuff, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with labels. I have nothing against labels. But to those who are outside and who are not in the Christian faith, it's all the same. It's all Jesus music, which I find quite interesting.
That's a really good answer. Ace, I see you nodding.
Man, I find this topic so stressful.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to stress you out.
No, you know why? Because like there's so many. Was described it as moving parts, and it's true. For the most part, I hate the labels. I hate them. I hate the labels, as in the tags that we put on our music. But I do understand purely from a music. Even if you say music business perspective, they are necessary so that we know which lane to funnel the money, even if it's just that. Do you know what I mean? I think that we're in the turning of the tide, to be honest. And I think that's why this question keeps rearing its head, because historically it was pretty much about race and ethnicity and all that kind of stuff. So CCM to this point, it's just meant music that white people did, and gospel just meant anything that black people did, and that's kind of born out of, in a way, it's kind of prejudice both ways.
I agree.
It's not a positive thing that's come out of. It's come out of nonsense within the church. Let's be real, within Christendom, but on both sides of the fence. But we're in a time now where music has moved to a place where it's under less control from everybody else, and you can control your own narrative a lot more. And not only from a music business perspective, but from a creative perspective, you can essentially do what you want because you can put out your music yourself. You go back 20 years to when Wiz was starting, when it cost like 1,500 quid just to make your first track. A lot of people decided, this music thing ain't for me. And then to get it out, you needed a body of people. And because they need like a label or something like that, right? So because they knew that, they controlled the narrative of where your music went, what it was, and all the rest of it. Now I can make a track and have it on the internet in 2 days on all platforms, and in a week. You see what I mean? So it doesn't, whether anyone buys it or not is by the by. I can make what I want. You see what I mean? So my whole point with this is that it matters a lot less now, the labels. And I think that I'm trying to work out right now in real time if they are healthy, if they are outdated or not. are they archaic because they keep us in that place of being held down with labels that are really driven by prejudice and unhealthy things, or are they things that help us? I'll be honest, at this juncture, I'm not totally sure. I think a lot of people are being held back from making music that they just want to make because of this. And I think that people do just need to just make the music they want to make. One thing I like about Triple is that from what I've got from him, from working with him, especially recently, like, you're very unapologetic about being a Christian rapper. A lot of people spend a lot of time saying, oh no, I'm just a rapper who's a Christian, which is not a problem, but you're totally cool being like that church-based rapper that's for Christians and Christians love it, and I don't have to be doing a massive thing for everyone outside of the church. I
want to touch on that before so I don't lose your train of thought. Sorry, forgive me. Two reasons why that's the case. One, because I've already mentioned it. Regardless of what I do, I will always be seen as a Christian rapper to those who are not in the faith. So all I can do is just make excellent music, quality music, and then just kind of push it. But then number two is more of a kind of like a business standpoint, or in the sense of like, all right, cool. When we're going to the mainstream arenas, let's say, just I'm throwing some random numbers out there now. Let's say if I put out a song and it does 10,000 units in the first week, and all those 10,000 units are Christians, to the mainstream record labels, they don't care who the audience is. They just saw 10,000 units done in your first week. So for me, I'm like, well, okay, let's feed the core first and be like, all right, cool. It's the numbers of the individuals in the body that are going to support me. And then, okay, cool. After that, then if people outside want to jump on the train, it's great. I think so many times some people spend so much time chasing something that they can't easily reach, when there's a built-in audience that's ready there to support you, given, at your fingertips. Feed that, support that, then let's go out there. But sorry, I just wanted to just to touch on that.
No, it's totally cool. I think it feeds into what I was saying. Obviously, not to spend the whole time on this one question. But I think that I think it's to be explored. I guess this is what you're doing. Like, are these labels still healthy? Who do they really help? The consumer, the label trying to sell them, the artist. Who do they really help? Why is it taken? I mean, and then we move into that conversation about, is everybody being true to themselves as artists now because they're following trends, which in one sense could be seen as smart, in other tech trends could be seen as not smart because you're not doing you, which means you're kind of diluting your own brand and you're unlikely to be successful. Do you see what I mean? So many questions. Please, else I will go on forever.
No, it's cool. And I think Triple is actually in touch. Carry on, WIZDOM. Sorry, you go. No,
I was just going to say, I in response to AYCE, I think it all comes down to your audience. I think that's the key for anybody to ask a question. One of the things that, looking back over Jesus' story, is you actually realize he didn't go anywhere. He stayed around Jerusalem. He never really left that area. He stayed in a very specific place and had a very specific audience, and decided to be incredibly specific with that audience. So he knew who he was called to. His other disciples, after his death, then went into different places because they were called to different audiences. And I think that's the key point. It isn't about, am I gospel, am I mainstream? Green Tech's biggest success was an anti-gun crime schools tour called Guns Down, because we were a gang of guys who started off by smoking weed, listening to hip hop in Clapham, who wanted to make a change in our lives, who had experienced gang violence in some way. So the thing that was actually the most truth for us was being able to go back to schools, go back to other young kids, go back to other people. And that was where we saw our biggest success. That's what got us on MTV. That's what got us, Record of the Week on Choice. That's what got us major moves. All happened off the back of this song that connected very much to who we were. Then had barely any specific gospel references in it, but you know us and you know the spirit from where it was coming from. That was the audience that was most in need of what it was that we had. think that that's the question I think for artists to ask at the very beginning of their careers is, who is it I've been called to serve?
Yeah, you're right.
Because if you've been called to serve the body, that's cool. Serve the body, right? You know, put in references that people in the body will recognize and feel accustomed to. Praise the Lord, saints. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do these things because that's your community. If your community is a bunch of hood rats from outside, then wear a balaclava, because they can relate to that in a way that possibly people in the body can't. And I think that the difficulty does come trying to switch from one to another, especially if it's just, well, boy, this will make more money, so I'll go over here. You know, as an example, and I'll end on this example. What's her name? Miley Cyrus has managed to completely take Hannah Montana and kill her dead in the streets. Nobody associates Miley Cyrus with Hannah Montana anymore. The two are completely different, because she deliberately went through a phase where she was making sure you did not connect one with the other. Because the first one was all about innocence and being a young girl. Now she was turning into a woman. She couldn't continue that narrative. So she had to change. And that's a difficult thing to do in public. So it does help if you start with understanding the intention of the audience that you want to have.
Well, her story is a bit sad because there's nothing she could do. She started really young, rather unfortunate. And I think that tends to happen a lot to artists who start early, because then they're like, actually, now I'm grown. Stop looking at me like a toddler. But
Christina
unfortunately,
Aguilera,
it happens to the best of them. Yeah,
all of them, especially if you're Disney, because Disney is connected with innocence. Nearly all of them, if they've wanted to have older careers, they've gone through this process where with Christina Aguilera, it was dirty. Demi Lovato, poor girl, has been through a whole heap of stuff, and it's an actual tool that's used. It's the same thing that Rihanna used to go from, hey, Mr. DJ, up on the replay, to people better have my money. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you have to be, it does really help if you understand who is it that I am for, who is my audience, who is it I'm here to serve from the start. It's a much more direct way to go. Because if you look at Governor B and Nick Brewer, who are best friends, nobody probably knows Nick Brewer as a gospel artist, but everybody knows Governor B as a gospel artist. People in the mainstream only know Governor as a Christian artist. No one would probably know that Nick Brewer is also a Christian. They're best of mates, but their audiences have been very different, and that's what I mean.
So speaking about, establishing your audience from the start, your group, Green Jade, made headlines back in 2008, I think it was, when you wrote to the organizers of the Mobile Awards asking to be removed from the list of nominees. And your stance was that, you were concerned that the gospel category in which you were nominated could interfere with the work that you were doing with young people of different religious backgrounds and social backgrounds. So coming to the theme of today's discussion, which is blurring the lines, based on the decision that you guys made back then, do you think that being a gospel or Christian artist could interfere with being relevant to society, given the fact that you obviously pulled out because you were associated with a gospel genre?
I think at the time it absolutely did. I think that things like that have changed that conversation. And I think we're in a different place now than we were back in 2008. When that happened, we, as I said, as you quite rightly said, we were currently doing our anti-gun crime school stuff, and we just done Tower Hamlets, where the majority of the schools were mainly Muslim. And we were concerned that the schools would have a negative reaction, because you got to understand, specifically with schools, they have this thing where they need to be showed to be balanced. So if we bring in a Christian group, then we need to bring in a Muslim group. Then we need to bring in a Jewish group. Then we need to bring in a Hindu group. So what they tend to do is, we ain't going to bring in any of you because too much. We can't do that. And that, unfortunately, in the setting specifically of schools, not necessarily everywhere, but definitely with schools, we knew that to be the case. So we were always very careful about the Christian faith side of it, because we wanted to make sure that people understood the message that we had was about restoration. It was about anti-gun crime, and it wasn't about evangelism. Even though that message of restoration is about God's grace and healing. We were trying to be subtle in understanding the realms where we were. Unfortunately, what happened was that got picked up in a newspaper, it got blown up, and exactly the thing that we didn't want to happen happened. Schools got wind of it and pulled out of it.
Oh dear.
So we went from being booked 6 months in advance to losing all of those bookings and having to change the name of Guns Down to Fighting Chance to get back bookings, because schools started to go, yeah, well, we know that this is your faith-based group and we're a bit concerned about this. And that was the concern. Not because we have a problem with our faith, but we know that the environment that we're in, that we need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
And I think on that premise as well, when we say we're Christian artists, or like Chance the Rapper, it's not Chance the Rapper, what's the other guy? Lecrae. We say we're rappers who are Christians. Some people are actually doing that tactically because they want to try and avoid these kind of scenarios where they get, sidelined because of their faith. And, in line with the topic of today, do we think that for certain opportunities, this was a clear example of, wanting to go and minister and reach out. And obviously it kind of had it backfired effectively when they knew you were faith-based. But for certain other opportunities that may present themselves, do you guys, having been in the industry for decades across the three of you, do you think that when it comes to light that you are Christians or that you have a faith-based message, that sometimes you could get sidelined for opportunities? Because that could be a reason for artists to want to blur the lines and not be very transparent about who they are and what they stand for.
Yeah, I mean, I think 100% that's the case. I mean, you take Wiz's example, just there, in today's society, he's got a massive lawsuit on he could bring a massive lawsuit for discrimination because there was nothing in their content that was Christian. They've been told they can't work because they are Christians. But in 2008, that wasn't a thing the way it is now. You see what I mean? So it's very obvious that being a Christian, I mean, even in my line of work in the music industry, believe it or not, even though everybody is pretty much unified, knowing that people from the church, etc., are the best musicians and stuff, that also has a stigma attached, whereby it's like, he's one of those church guys, yada yada yada. So I've spent a lot of my time not denouncing anything, but I guess not necessarily being like, in my life anyway, I don't lead with I'm a Christian. My life, I guess, is how we're meant to be. Like, if you talk to me, you'll find out very quickly that I am, but it bears no relevance in my day-to-day life in that way, just like any other job. And I've seen it. I'm sure I've been affected by it, that whole kind of church musician stigma. So it literally happens in all walks of life. So I totally understand why some people would want to do that. But also, I think it's because there's a flip side to this, where the church hasn't been very accepting of things that they don't deem to be Christian. So then
somebody's actually asking a question along those lines. You carry on. I was just going to say.
Yeah. So it's like the church frowns on things that it doesn't deem to be Christian. So then you find yourself trying not to be Christian because you feel rejected by your own people. And I don't mean Christian in lifestyle, but being overtly Christian in your delivery, which is why I made a point of saying about Triple earlier, that he's very unapologetically a Christian rapper, because he's like, our music's for the church. Most people were not saying that. You know what I mean? I think you'll find as soon as you come out of the worship music arena, that's when this topic becomes very prevalent. And then the worship music arena is a very interesting one by itself. I mean, if I was to poke the bear a little bit about the worship, because it's like, how are we worshiping these days as people? If we take Wiz's definition of gospel and Christian, how are we worshiping as Black people with an African Caribbean whatever background, all of a sudden we don't connect with that music anymore if we're in church. And I feel that's got a lot to do with what we're talking about now. So there's the mainstream line, but then there's also the line when you bring it inside Christendom, and it's all the same thing. Everybody's running away from not being accepted or trying to get ahead. And it begs the question, how many people are really being true to themselves?
Yeah, this is it. You have to be authentic. Literally, you have to do what is authentic to yourself. And Tammy T's asked a question, which you've partly answered, but I wanted to get maybe Triple to weigh in on this. He says, would it be fair to say that those called to do music that's probably for an audience mainly out of the church have less support from the church community? I have a view, but I'd like to get what Triple has to say on this.
The long and short answer of it is yes. Unfortunately, individuals who are of a faith-based in terms of what they believe, when it comes to their art form and the way that they express themselves, if it's not overtly Christian, if it's not like, oh yes, Jesus, 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 a lot of the more traditional church folk will raise an eyebrow and be like, what's this? I don't know. We can't, this is not, there's not enough, Jesus overt Christian message in this. We're not going to push it to our congregation or our church or in our youth groups and whatnot. Then you end up ostracizing those artists, because a lot of the time those kind of artists are going to find it very difficult because they're not being accepted by those who are supposed to love and accept them and support them and encourage them. And they're going into new territories, they're going into new grounds, and they're not straight away be loved and accepted by those in that field as well. So it's like they're stuck in this middle ground. In saying that, one thing I have learned of recent, and this is something I now stand by, whether you're Christianized or not, whether you make Christian music or not, just make music of excellence. Where the production, the lyrics, the content, the mixing, the mastering, where that is top notch, the songwriting top notch. Because I, honestly speaking, till today, Shackle still gets played in the clubs.
Oh yeah, till tomorrow.
Kanye West did a whole Jesus is King album, and people were I was on rotation. That was overtly Christian music. But yes, it's different because a lot of these individuals have a platform and a status. But the reality is, okay, let's come back down. We look at someone like Happy, who's been absolutely doing some amazing stuff in that kind of Afro gospel kind of, not gospel, Afro kind of music scene. And there's some very overt Christian messages in the music, but because it's good music, it's being played on Capital Extra, it's being played on Radio 1. So the moral of the story is, if it's good music, it will get played. So we have to ask ourselves, especially as Christians, are we making good music? The message is there. We understand the message. I'm talking about the songwriting. I'm talking about the lyrical content. I'm talking about creativity. I'm like, all these different dynamics. Is there a standard of excellence that even though people may not agree with the message or they may not understand the message, sonically speaking, does what we do carry? Yeah, does it slap?
Do you know what you said? Totally, I can totally connect with that, because I don't know if you guys know the song Jerusalem that was very popular last year. The piano song. It's if the lyrics of the song are actually Christian when you translate it to English, but people are dancing to the song left, right, and center. You've got air hostesses, you've got people in the restaurants just doing all these dance moves. But because it's such a catchy tune and it's well produced as well, they don't even care, and they might just be prophesying over their lives because it's a prayer. It's actually
there's so many examples of that. I mean, there was one Funky House tune that came out years ago in the morning, and I was like, "That's another song." There was an what's this? WIZDOM, you might be able to tell. Yeah, there's another.
I was going to say, in actually, sometimes the Christian community isn't aware that there is a whole gospel house world that is mainly non-Christians involved in it, mainly non-Christian audience, that absolutely love full-on gospel lyrics, unadulterated over a house beat, and they will dance to it all night. And I know AYCE is involved in the
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, it's not. You don't even need to say gospel house. It's just house music.
It's just house music.
House, and that's why I love house music, and I've always connected with house music.
Wookie Battle, that's the song I was trying to remember.
Exactly. I grew up like DJing the stuff that I like. So I'm at the Bricks and Jam in 2 weeks playing, DJing, and it's a soulful house and disco set. What do you think I'm gonna play? Do you know what I mean? It's funny because way back, and this is where the question you've asked is brilliant, because Wiz just said something. Oftentimes, the church is not aware how much the church is doing outside of the church. So it's actually very ignorant and arrogant, because they don't actually realize the impact that's being had. In the times of Wookie and all that, Wookie was the massive one that everyone knows till now, but they don't know that Four Corners was banging in the clubs. The garage mixes of the Four Corners stuff. There was all of the New Color stuff. There was loads of stuff. Everything has a remix, and it's banging in all of the clubs, and everybody's dancing to it same way.
Even now, having Florence and the Machine cover, sometimes I feel like throw my hands up in the.
Oh my goodness, that song is a gospel song, and it's on the radio all the time.
All the time.
Jesus.
You know what I mean?
And that's just that song.
About Jesus.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys know.
Jesus. Well, Candy Satin, Hallelujah Anyway is a massive. I mean, you guys might not know Hallelujah Anyway. That's Candy Satin as well. So that's massive in house. Yeah, massive. So if you see, and this is the thing, so there's a lot of people raising their eyebrows at people in clubs and stuff like that. Different conversation, right? But you don't understand. If I'm in Ministry of Sound and DJ Spen is over with the Jasper Street Company, I was in Ministry of Sound just before a pandemic, right? It's 2:00 in the morning, and I kid you not, I listened to an hour and a half of a live set from Jasper Street Company, and I'm telling you, it was full on church.
Whoa.
I mean, full on church, and that's just the live set. So there's before and after, but they're singing something like "Can't Stop Praising His Name," "Joy," all of these songs. And I'm in there, and I'm like, there are no Christians in here except me and Steph and Kelly. And people don't understand. We were having full on church. People in there like worshiping. They don't know they're worshiping, but hands are up, all the rest of it. On the stage, they're ministering, they're singing, ad-libbing to the crowd. It's all happening.
See, I had a very similar experience to AYCE, but with drum and bass. It's a DJ called Kenny Mitchell, and we were at a Christian rock festival in Germany called Freakstock. And I think Green Jade were probably the only 4 black people there of about 25,000, right?
Oh no!
And they had a drum and bass tent, and they had DJ Kenny Mitchell, who did a 2-hour full-on drum and bass worship set. It was insane. It's the most amazing worship session I have ever been to, and it just blew my mind of his ability to be able to minister over the music with this euphoric feeling. It was incredible. And as I say, like, you know, to some extent, like A said, it's a bit like Jamaica. Jamaica I don't think fully understands the impact that reggae music and Bob Marley had on the rest of the world. It's a small Caribbean island that has, you know, at one point, for many years, the biggest dancehall queen in Jamaica was Japanese, because that's the impact that it has. And I think the body needs to understand that outside of the things that necessarily it's used to, there is an impact having. There is a representation of Christ in places where they possibly don't expect him to be. But it's about being able to embrace that and understand that the people who've been called to minister these areas may look a little bit different from them, may use different language from them, but God has got them there for a reason.
Honestly, I genuinely am learning so much from this conversation. And I think one of the things that Triple has said, which is going to stay with me probably forever, is enough with the labels, enough with this, you know, trying to overthink this. Just make excellent music. And I think if there's anything that we take away from today's conversation, because it's all well and good, we're talking about crossing over from Christian to gospel and in and out into mainstream. But if the music is excellent, it's going to go far. And me being the strategist that I am, if I was an artist, given what you guys have said, and I'm going to ask on behalf of other artists, how would you advise artists not to produce excellent music? Because that is that is not that is not the conversation for today. But how would you advise artists to be strategic about crossing over, given that you've heard, you know, Christian music, Christian songs being played in these different settings? So if a Christian had an album and it was whatever genre, how do you think they could actually cross over, or at least be relevant outside of church without necessarily, you know, denouncing the fact that they're a Christian artist or gospel artist or whatever?
I think, yeah,
let Triple go, yeah.
There's one, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's one scripture in Chronicles, and it says that the men, they understood the times. I think it's in chapter 16, somewhere like that. So the men, they understood the times. So as an artist, what is very, very key is to understand the times. What's popular at the moment, what's current at the moment, what are people doing, what are the tools at your disposal that you need to make the most of. Like, understand the times. So if it's TikTok, if all of these different places, all these different things, and then it's funny because you have to, it's a balancing act, because I have to understand the times and the trends, but I don't want to compromise my artistry. So it's like that fine balancing act of trying to get it right. Which I think is very, very difficult and can be very discouraging, especially because if you might be doing the tick boxes, but then remember you're fighting against that. We were talking about earlier on, so you're fighting against the algorithm, which may not work in your favor. Yeah. So that's number one. And the second thing I'll say is be creative. Like we serve a God who created the world in 6 days and everything in it, and he said it is good. And we need to understand that, be creative. I always say this all the time. Me and Wretch, me and Chip, me and Digger D, me and whoever else, we can talk about the exact same things. It's just that our point of views are different. So we're talking about it, but from a different angle. My vantage point is different. We can talk about the same thing, the same topic, but I'm speaking it from a different perspective. And I think individuals who are making, music which is birthed from the faith, but they want it to cross over, be creative. If you're going to try and you got to understand that Jesus spoke in parables. Jesus so easily could have just said, yes, I am, which he did do. But there were times where he was like, the seeds, farmer, this and that. He spoke in parables. He was a creative individual in the ways he was like relaying the message. So he didn't compromise the message. He didn't compromise the essence of what he was saying. He was just presenting it in a way which was more palatable. And I think as creatives, we have to say, all right, do you know what? Chicken is good for you and vegetables are good for you, but you don't like your vegetables if they're like that. So maybe let's make a smoothie. Let's make a smoothie. Let's make a green smoothie. It's still got all the nutrients in there, but instead of you having to chop it up and buy it, you can just drink it. You can just back it. You still get the nutrients. So the presentation has to be very well thought out, and I think from there it just can just grow from there.
Yeah, that's really good. Anyone that wants to add to that?
Just adding to basically what Triple was saying, I think I have this thing about, got to give the people what they want sprinkled with a lot of what they need. And I think it's about, for me, just going back to I'll touch on the algorithm thing, understanding that there's creativity, but now that creativity goes into a digital world. And that digital world is about you being able to understand how the noughts and the ones work. So, you need, if you've got a product, you need to be able to get it onto the right playlists on Spotify. So you technically need to understand things like you need to put it up to your DSP at least 4 weeks before your launch. And you need to be able to contact Spotify and tell them, these are the playlists I would like this to be on because this is what it sounds like. And these are the things that it should be played next to. Personally, TuneCore is the best means to get to Spotify playlisters. I think you can also use independent playlisters. And where now we don't make CDs, take that £2,000 that you would have spent on CD singles and put that on promotion for Instagram, Facebook, make a music video, put it on YouTube, make sure you get that, because the way that you blow, for want of a better phrase, is not by your immediate friends and family. It's about getting into the conscious of an audience that want what you have. So it's about being able to get it on the platforms to be able to do that, get it played, get it into people's minds. Like was mentioned before, do a TikTok dance, but get it out there to people. I've been currently talking a lot about R&B, because I manage a couple R&B artists, and Ellen May's name keeps getting brought up with a track called Boot Up. But what actually happened with that, it'd been out for about 9 months, and then it happened to be playing in the background of Kylie Jenner's video, and people searched it, and that's how the song blew up. So it is about getting it out there. And another example is Lloyd Wade of the Wades had a house track out for ages. And it happened to be played in Steven Gerrard's car on the video of him driving into Ibrox when they won the Scottish Premiership. People searched the tune, and the tune blew up off the back of the fact he was just playing in his car because the song was seen so much. So it is about getting your music out there onto platforms and interacting with this digital world with WIZDOM from a technical point of view. Once you've got that music,
I was just going to interject something there as well, or just like high five off the guys, and probably just a little bit more on a human level. I think as Christians, one of the things that often stands in the way is this whole moral debate, because we're made to feel like if you're not standing on the top of a building shouting, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord," or whatever, that you're not doing it. And for many, many a year, the church has sent out that messaging. The truth is, we are human beings who live life. We go to work, we come home. People walk past us in the street and barge us, and we want to thump them. People crash into our car. All of the stuff that happens, that happens to you as well. So I think there's a lot of artists that need to give themselves a break and realize that when you sing about your or rap or whatever about your experience, it's always going to be from your vantage point. So that makes it Christian music straight away, because you're a Christian. So it's not in the quoting scripture every second verse or saying it from the do you know what I mean? Like quoting scripture. It's not in that. It's in how you say it. I'll never forget one time when I was in my days working with LCGC, we were working on a new album at the time, and I'd written this song, and I'll never forget, I taught it to the choir, and someone stood up after I'd gone through it all and we were about to run it a few times and said, "Is this what we're doing now?"
Right, what did it sound like?
So she said, "Is this what we're doing now? You didn't mention the name of Jesus once."
Oh, okay.
And you know what? In my whole time running stuff like that, and that's one of the beautiful thing about choirs. At any time you're looking at around 50 people, which is 50 different personalities, 50 different people from different walks of life, 50 different jobs, all the rest of it. So it taught me so much about people. So I love questions like that, because it kind of got me to help people think a different way about just the musical process. And I said to her, I said to the whole choir, listen, I don't know about you, but my relationship with God and Christ is real. So listen to the lyrics, right? The song was called Closer to You, right? I'll give you the chorus. It was, "Oh, I want to be closer to you, to feel your warm embrace. No one can love me like you do. Close, close," right? Now, because I hadn't mentioned Jesus and all the rest of it, it sounded like something else to this person. And I truly believe that is because of the way she processes music and the messaging that the church gives us. I don't know about her, but to me, that's exactly how I feel about Christ.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And had I said it from the pulpit with my mouth, she would have been probably the first one to be screaming hallelujah, yes, yes, yes. But because of the form it was delivered in, it was like, hold on, is this what we're doing now? Sorry, a mosquito's just flown in the room. Yeah, is this what we're doing now? So after I finished, she was the first one to be like, you know, I never really thought about it like that.
Wow.
And it's like, that's kind of the message. That's the message that I want to put across, that it's like, it's okay to talk about God, how you see him.
Yeah.
It
and it's
doesn't
okay
make
to
it
write
not.
to write music from a Christian
Exactly.
perspective about life. I remember when I got
Exactly.
a very clear instruction to do my first album, it was literally a spiritual encounter because I was fasting, and I just got a clear instruction, the name of the album and what the songs on the album should be about. And when people heard my first album, because I'm a praise and worship leader, and I've always been a praise and worship leader, so they're probably expecting like praise and worship. But I had really clear instructions that I should write music about life from a Christian perspective, and the themes and everything. In fact, I got a very clear instruction to write a song welcoming a baby into the world, because when you go to christenings, what music do you play? Like literally. So I wrote a song called Welcome, and I've had people, you know, tag me when a friend of theirs has had a baby, and they're like, oh, I'm playing Sarah's song for you to welcome your baby. Or, you know, somebody actually had several miscarriages, and that song helped her when she eventually had a baby, and she was like, I want to hear this song, you know. So, and this is the thing about, not just, as you say, it doesn't always have to be scripture, because life happens, and we need music from us to help us go through life, through heartbreaks, through divorces, through getting a new job, having a birthday party. Do we have a Christian happy birthday song? You know, things like that. We need to be there plugging the gap for people to celebrate and live life and just be human, but coming from a Christian perspective. So my first two albums were literally that, where life music, but through a Christian's eyes, helping, like Still My Joy, which was my first ever single, was really about mental health and not allowing situations that we can't control our emotions. And who better to talk about these things than we who know the best when it comes to scripture? Because the truth is, we live in a world where most people are anxious. You know, there's no certainty about tomorrow. Look at the last 18 months, for example. And people could easily lose hope if they're not rooted in Christ. Even Paul said, if everything that we've believed in is false, then we of all people are the most hopeless. But we know that who we believe in and who we trust in is real, which is why we have hope. I mean, of all people, Christians are the ones who hold on the most when things fail, because we have hope. And it's that hope that we want to share with the world, even if it's just, as WIZDOM has said, in uplifting and inspiring and soulful music called gospel, which I kind of disagree with that theme, by the way. I was gonna come on now, because I'm like, well, you could have, for me, gospel is the good news. And so I don't want to go back to the first question, but it's like
please.
Any music
we all agree.
That,
we need a disagreement.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, any music that speaks about the good news to me is gospel. And as a matter of fact, you know, the Dove Awards, which is presumably of the white persuasion. The organization that gives the Dove Awards is called the Gospel Music Association, the GMA. Gospel Music Association. And it's not a black organization, because the music that preaches the gospel, that sings about the gospel, sings about the good news of Jesus. So for me, when you said that definition, I'm like, I'm gonna come back to you on that, and I completely forgot. But it's like, yeah, for me, gospel music is something different. For me, gospel music can be sung by anyone because of the message.
Yeah.
But yeah,
within the definition, it says incorporates both the gospel genre and the gospel message.
Okay.
It says that it says whether delivered overtly or by inspiration. Because
there you go.
Yeah,
can I ask everyone no, but
why did we go back to point one? I didn't want to take us back to point one.
Quickly. I need to ask a question, right? And the question is this. I totally understand what you've just said, Sarah, and I don't disagree, right? And the only reason why there'd ever be any other distinction is due to what I was saying about the negativity of prejudice and black people do this and white people do that. But my question is for you, it's because for me, as I say, I agree with what you're saying, but it's quite utopian. So if that's the way you see it, does it matter if nobody else sees it that way?
No, we need to educate ourselves, because that is really how it should be. As you say, it's almost a utopia, but at least we can get as close to that as possible, because
you're right.
Is the truth. That is the truth about the genre.
Yeah.
I mean, a white person can sing gospel music and a black person can sing CCM. But for me, it's about the message. Because I remember when I first started and people used to ask me, are you a soul singer or an R&B or a gospel? Because my music was more R&B soul with a gospel message. And I used to say I'm a gospel singer. I sing in the genre of R&B soul, but my message is gospel. My message is infused with a message of hope, of inspiration, of life, of faith, of God. It's about the message. Because if you think about it, and don't even get me started. No, I'm not even going to open that kind of worms. If you think about it, right, the gospel genre can be anything. Can be reggae, can be rap, can be soul, can be R&B, can be worship. But those are not the gospel sound. For me, it's the gospel message that is expressed in many different sounds.
The question: when your product, but when your album came out, what category was it put in? It's put in gospel, right?
My first
not
single,
R&B.
Listen, my first single, I put it out in R&B, and I realized, and this is why this topic is relevant in terms of crossing over, because crossing over, you quickly realize that you're competing against people who are in their music videos half naked, so it's not exactly going to work for you. So you might as well just stick to your lane and be in the gospel,
because that's how everybody views you.
Yeah.
So does it?
Right,
and that's why I asked the question. Yeah, it is. But then, if you want to be successful, does it make sense for you, even though you are right, does it make sense for you to hold on to that definition, or to, I guess, conform, if that's the word, to the other one, which is negative? We can all agree, but it's a way of getting you to your right audience.
Yeah. And what that does is it makes us, we in the end, we are at the losing end. And here's why. Whenever the MOBA nominations come up, right, because that's the only one for me that's relevant for us in the UK. It's the equivalent of the BETs for those watching from the from abroad, and probably the BETs, I think. You have all these genres, and I can tell you a good few, maybe not all, right, but I can at least on one hand count a good few gospel artists who could shine in each of the other genres, if that makes sense. I can pull up a solid R&B soul gospel song that can stand in an R&B soul genre by itself, not as a gospel song. But it feels, and that's, I think they're actually agreeing with my definition in the sense that, gospel music is about the message, and therefore somehow outside of the church, they've lumped everyone who has that message into a genre, even though they're singing rap or reggae or hip hop or amapiano, whatever it is, or traditional or Afro beats. We're all gospel. But for me, that is my definition. However, I feel like in the end, we're kind of at the losing end, because if you have a solid rap song like a Governor B, in my opinion, should be nominated with a Stormzy, because he's done some great things. A Triple O should be nominated amongst the best rappers as well. But once you're a gospel, once your message is Christian or gospel, and then there's 1,000 of us competing for one award because because all of us in all our different genres and all our different styles are just lumped into one group, and all the excellence is just in one place. So that's my position.
Again, there's a flip side to that, in that
we lost you there.
I find there's strangely a flip side to that from an R&B point of view, in that there's actually more there feels like there's more tension with what R&B is and gospel message. Am I okay? My Wi-Fi is a bit like in that R&B is baby making music, really at its core. And I think sometimes the challenge that a lot of R&B Christian
I get where he's going.
Same.
With his point,
I want, let me jump in on that. I don't know if he's finished this point, but I want to jump in there. I think as well with regards to that, you made a good point, Sarah, is that we as Christians, we need
vocalists have is if you really want to go R&B, challenges probably a lot of things.
Oh no, he's gone.
He was talking the whole time.
Sorry,
Wiz. He was going for about a minute.
Sorry, you might want to say
sorry, guys.
Last minute, please.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Go over again. Yeah.
No, so what I was saying is that it's funny that a lot of Christian-based artists want to sing R&B. The problem is the very essence of R&B is baby making music, and you know, sometimes I find Christian artists have a difficult way of or club music. And there is a difficulty in how do I get across the message that I have through this genre when this genre is about this. And it's a similar sort of thing when people have the question about, okay, how do I get a gospel message through drill, as an example, where drill is often about robbing people and busting them up. So how exactly am I going to be able to convey the message that I have in this format? So and that's why, again, going back to some of the things we were talking about before about house and drum and bass, I think some of these formats are actually easier for us to be able to convey an unadulterated message in, because they don't have the same level of construct about what they tend to be about that in other genres. So I do think that that's also a big part of the question here that goes beyond just making good music and thinking about the audience and how it is you're going to adapt what it is you have to say under the beat that you're going to be delivering it on.
Really good stuff. Triple, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say very quickly off the back of the point that you made earlier on and point Wiz just made just now. I think we need music for different arenas and different settings and scenarios, because you know, you guys as married folk, I don't know how many times you're having your moments with your other halves to Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin. I don't know if that's the thing, then cool, innit? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
For me, it's Brian McKnight. Just so you know,
he's not present.
Do you see what I'm saying? And I love R&B. Period. Like I've always said that I'm an R&B artist in a rapper's body, but in general, it's like it's not. I have no qualms listening to mainstream. That's a whole nother conversation altogether. But the point being, at the same time, we do need Christians and faith-based artists making music for that setting.
You're right.
Why not? Why not? Especially because the Bible talks about. This is what I'm saying, and this is the point I made earlier on. The Bible talks about like so much, and I think somebody said this, and it stuck with me. Why do we hold Christians to a standard that the Bible doesn't even hold itself to? Because when we look at the Bible, you got to remember, there's the book of Esther does not mention God once. Songs of Solomon, all it is Songs of Solomon stuff. Need I say more? Do you know what I'm trying to say? There's so many instances in the Bible where the Bible is not even the Bible isn't. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like throughout the whole of Scripture, there's different examples and periods where even you know, it's like, look at Lamentations. Lamentations is not an easy book to read. So if the Bible doesn't like just talk about Jesus, everything points to Jesus, but then there are aspects where it's got to be creative, and there's storytelling, and there's an outpouring of emotion, and there's relationships, and there's all these different kind of things. So if the Bible is doing that, why can we not do it? Why should we not be doing it? Do you get what I'm trying to say? And I think we definitely need to, again, coming back to the point I was making earlier, just be creative with our artistry. It's very, very important.
That is really, really good. That, I think, again, it comes to make good music, make excellent music, regardless of the genre that it's being made in. And I'm just looking at the comments here. Somebody says the artists coming out now in the R&B genre are not having problems making Christian R&B. So I think that is to your point, WIZDOM. Don't know whether you agree or disagree, but I think it's a bit relative in the sense that it is what it is. But speaking about genres, though, because when you guys were talking earlier, you did reference a good few times about remixes in the house and more so in the house kind of genre. And it made me remember there was a day we had in my church. We have small groups, and we had a small group that did like we had a personal trainer in church. So we did exercises in church and on a Saturday morning, and one of them, he literally just plays like, you know, workout music essentially. And one morning there was a song by, if it was Elevation or Hillsong or whatever, but it had like a house remix, and it was a worship song, and we were working out to this song, and in my head I'm thinking, this is really cool. So it just goes to show you don't necessarily have to box your music into a specific genre. And as WIZDOM said earlier, you need to look at what you can easily cross over into. And I think if you're an artist who's making any kind of music and you want to be authentic to yourself, go ahead and do that. But then an easy way, I could be wrong, to cross over could be to have a remix in like a house version, for example, and then just put it out there, send it to DJs, and there you've literally crossed over easily.
You're not wrong. You're a trillion% right. In fact, the whole R&B hip hop, like in the 90s, early 2000s genre in the UK was built on remixes. In fact, the music industry was so, and many people that are execs and big in the game now made their bones doing remixes of an Atomic Kitten track. So there'd be remix, even Jerkins Dark Child, there'd be a Dark Child remix. Dark Child, do you know what I mean? Like, there'll be all of that, so that it will be played in the clubs and can reach that group of people. So the industry was literally built on that. Sometimes the remix will go to #1 and people didn't even realize the original. Do you know what I mean? So definitely.
As a matter of fact, you just reminded me of Kirk Franklin's Stomp, because the remix did better than the original when he featured this girl, is it Left Eye or whoever it was, or somebody from the rapper. It was
it was
exactly.
Salt.
It was somebody.
Oh, Salt and Pepper. Sorry,
Salt and Pepper. Yeah, that's what it was. Salt and Pepper. So when he did the rap version, that remix actually did more, and it was in an era when that kind of rap sound was more popular than the gospel, which was what he was coming out with at the time. If that makes sense. So
big house cut as well. I have the vinyl downstairs. Big house cut.
Yep.
Really?
Stomp. Yeah.
Wow. See, exactly. So I think that's another thing that. So say that again.
Sorry. So just it's funny that the session that I was running before I came to this is we at Talyard where I work. There's a lot of drum and bass artists based here. Charlene Hector, for example, has just done a track with a guy called Dimensions, who's based here, and I facilitate the collective, which is part of Amplified Academy, which is Hillsong's youth music development. So we facilitate their songwriters here, and we've just done a project where their songwriters have been writing to drum and bass, and we've just had the first listening party to the songs that they've been making. And it has been all about opening them up to a different musical genre and letting them know that they have the space here to be able to create whatever it is that they want over this other musical genre that they didn't know they had access to before. We've had some amazing music come off the back of this. These are Christian artists, and but they didn't know that this was something that was open to them. They didn't know that this was an option. And that was very much what I wanted to do with this, was show them that there are so many options other than the ones that you maybe think are obvious for you to be able to get your message across and out there.
That is really good. And that's the thing, we can't necessarily say we're being boxed anymore, because as AYCE said, it's a very open this era is a very open era. There's a lot of accessibility from DJs to producers to mixers you can put your music in any genre you want, especially as an independent artist. It's up to you. Just select on the drop down and you're free to go. And then you can next week do a remix in house and submit it. And then next week you could do a remix in Amapiano and submit it, whatever you think works. But I think as Triple O said as well, it's about having that Christian voice in all these spaces. So if for whatever reason we feel like, oh, I'm a Christian and therefore I can only make certain music and be in certain spaces, that is not an excuse. Because I personally, one of the things that has been driving me recently is the mandates that we've been given by Christ, which was when he spoke to the disciples, he said, go to Jerusalem and then Judea and then Samaria and then to the uttermost. It was literally step by step by step. So he didn't, and when you think about it, the Jews are a very conservative kind of group of people. They're very, this is us, this is we, this is who we are, you're not welcome kind of thing. And to think that Jesus was a Jew and all he said when he was leaving was, okay, now take it out, get it to other people. That is so counter the culture that he was from. So, and I feel like sometimes we as Christians, we are like, this is us, this is who we are, this is for us. when we're supposed to be thinking like Christ, which is take it out. And in order to do that, sometimes, like when he called Paul and when he called Peter and said to him to eat the unclean food, not saying we should eat unclean food, but it's like the things that we think are unheard of are probably the things that we need to start thinking creatively about. How can we push ourselves beyond these limits? How can we be that? Because there's so many issues happening in our society. Only this week, there was a stabbing near my house. Literally, I do my walks past that place, right? My daughter travels to school through that place. And I was just thinking, God, what can I do in my community? And I feel like as musicians, that is an opportunity for us to do something. And obviously, WIZDOM, you've got a lot of experience working in schools and things like that, and you've done that in your time. But I feel like in order to reach out, we need to start thinking about how we can respond to situations with the gospel, with the message of positivity, of hope, of inspiration, and just be creative, because the world needs us. The world needs to hear our message. And if we keep thinking about our little space and just making our sound relevant to us, we're not going to be relevant. We're not going to be impactful to the world. It's literally going to be like the parable of the talents, where one person took it and buried it because that was the most convenient thing to do, and the other went out and invested it. And to invest something and double it, you'd have had to strategize, you'd have had to think, you'd have had to plan, you'd have had to work to get the results. And I think for us as Christian creatives, that is probably where we're lacking a bit, in the sense that we need to take the time to strategize. We need to be strategic in our approach to reach out, because again, we do, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is not any textbook, but in my opinion, we do need to cross over. That is kind of my position.
You've also got to remember that, and I'm going to separate Christian faith and churches in this statement, right? The church often doesn't encourage you to go out. It presents itself as a safe place to come into. So the environment that we are coming from is often trying to say, outside is dangerous, we're safe here. So therefore, the mindset that follows is that anything outside is dangerous. Do I want to be in danger? And you have to be able to overcome that understanding, to understand, yeah, I have safety in Christ, but I'm also supposed to be out here doing this. So that other side of the message hasn't often been, preached. We don't. So, for example, there's no real difference between you taking your tithing or taking your offering and sowing that into a homeless refuge, or somewhere for battered women, or putting it in a place. There's nothing wrong to say that, but that isn't necessarily the message we would be encouraged to do. No one would say don't do it. It's just that's not the way that it's presented. And that's not a fault necessarily. It's just, unless you think about the other side, you might not know that the other side is available. And I think that that's sometimes why there is a reticence about going into different places that don't appear to be safe. And I don't know if we're supposed to do that. And, because if you're looking to the church for the cosign, you're unlikely to get it, because the church is about being safe in a place. If you look to Jesus, that's everything he did.
Yeah, it's radical. If you look to Jesus, and he's very radical in everything that he did.
Very
to the
radical.
point where they wanted to kill him several times. Yeah, yeah, his life was literally on the edge the whole time.
Yeah, but it's just understanding that, and as I say, I'm not necessarily saying that as a criticism of the church. I'm just saying there's certain mindsets that we as Christians have got into that work in a church setting that don't necessarily work outside. But we're still working out how we toe that line between the two, because the church isn't Jesus, it's his wife.
It's his bride. That's right. That's right.
And I differ on certain outlooks, even though we are both trying to get to the same place. So it is important to be able to understand in context what it is you've been called to do.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I want to wrap it up with one final question, and just to get some thoughts from each of you before we kind of wrap it up. And also, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, thanks for hanging with us this whole time, and thanks for engaging. I can see the comments are also going on. And if you have any questions, please, by all means, drop them in the comments as well. We're going to be wrapping up very soon. So the final question I have for you guys, obviously, you've worked in both the Christian and the mainstream spaces, and you've dealt with Christian and mainstream artists, and you would have had, interestingly, different experiences working in both spheres, if you like. But if you had to give some tips or advice to people who are looking to do something similar to what you've done, in the sense of crossing over, apart from, create music and, submit it and things like that, what kind of practical tips would you give to people who are looking to really be present and relevant in both the Christian and the mainstream space? And I know these come with challenges, as you've already highlighted. So it'd be interesting to see from your positive and negative experiences on both sides. I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, I would. The first thing I would say is, don't be afraid to work with people who are not Christian. Don't limit yourself to, I'm only going to work with the Christian engineer that mixes and prays before he starts EQing my vocals, and the Christian mastering engineer who sanctifies his board before he starts to level everything out. Like, don't be afraid to work with individuals who are not from the faith on your music, because what that does is that automatically opens up new doors, because someone who is not in the faith is now hearing your content, your music, your creativity, your art form, who they probably wouldn't have been exposed to that otherwise. There's one producer that I'm working with at the moment. He's not a Christian, not in the faith, but he loves it. He just loves the music. He said, this is good music. You're good at what you do. And then we end up having conversations, and then we just end up dialoguing. And then before you know it, just of casual conversation, I'm ministering to him. But it's not like turn from your sins and believe Jesus Christ. It's just genuine, casual conversation. And that's how you hear stories of Kirk Franklin being in the same room as Big Sean and Pusha T, or Lecrae being in the same room as Kendrick Lamar, because he's working with individuals that work with those individuals, and they're bringing them into those spaces, and they're able to have those conversations. So I would say for an artist, don't be afraid to work with someone who is not in the faith. That doesn't define who you work with, doesn't define the faith that you believe in. The faith that you believe in is a faith, and we've been called to be the light in the darkness. So that would be my main one. I don't want to go on for too long, but that would probably be my main piece of advice.
Just on that, because somebody on YouTube is commenting. Sorry, just on your points, and I think this may be in response to what you've just said, Triple. Someone on YouTube says, just be careful. Actually, let me put that up. Says, just be careful when you sign contracts, because you need the real wisdom from God. So I'm guessing that is in response to dealing with non-Christians. So
that's in response to dealing with human beings, period.
Yeah, for real though. Yeah.
Listen, you could be
you're right.
You could be signing to a Christian Integrity or whatever label. I'm sorry, that's not
you're
a
right,
non-Christian.
you're right.
That's a human being thing.
You're right. My bad. Okay, Wisdom, you were gonna go.
I was going to say that again, for me, it's really important that you know who you are and where you're supposed to be. So for just as an example, like I'm really comfortable in clubs and in festivals and in places like that. Not everybody is. I don't need to be in those places and use drugs or drink to be in that environment, where there might be a lot of people around that do. And it is about you being comfortable, because there's no point you being in a place where you're not supposed to be and you end up getting yourself in trouble. As another example is, I run a modeling agency, which is not a Christian modeling agency. I run a mainstream modeling development agency. And it is an environment where not only I have the support of my wife, but I also have the grace of God to be in. And I wouldn't necessarily say to everybody, yeah, go out, start a modeling agency. But again, it puts me in a place where I'm able to minister to people that other people wouldn't necessarily be in that environment for. And I just think it's about be very, very honest with yourself about the place that you want to be. If you're going to go musician on tour with a mainstream band, know that porn at some point is being watched. Know that, you know, at some point, possibly someone might use cocaine or weed or something around you, and just be aware that that is the environment. So therefore, it's about how you behave and conduct yourself in the environment, not about the environment being the environment. The environment is the environment. Do you know what I mean? So it is, you have to be necessarily understanding. Unfortunately, I would also say that within Christian circles, some of them things happen too. So,
oh dear.
and I think it's important what Triple O was saying before, even about, you know, when you were saying about the contracts. People are people.
You're right.
Your integrity is the only thing that you are in charge of. That's it. You cannot dictate the integrity of other people around you, because people are people. Do you know what I mean? You could be in gospel choirs that are sleeping with everybody in the choir. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? You don't tell me that you don't know that happens. Do you know what I mean?
You let the bomb drop.
I know, we dropping the bombs before he just logs off.
Oh, we getting violent now.
This is the moment when his Wi-Fi is
violent.
freeze.
But yeah, I want the people to be able to be, and this was the beauty of Jesus, right?
His Wi-Fi says no, I'm not having this.
Sorry?
Yeah, we lost you about 30
we lost
seconds.
you,
You want to say that again?
The beauty of Jesus.
Oh, sorry. Oh man. No, I was just saying. And with the Holy Spirit in us, we're both human and divine. There's sometimes that we will be greatly connected to God, and there's sometimes we will properly be connected to our flesh, right? And that is our humanity. But understand that Christ died for that humanity. You know what I mean? And I think it's important, though, that we understand our own integrity and what it is we've been called to do, because we cannot dictate what others around us choose to do.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Ace. I'm sure Ace has seen everything.
I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
That way. But sorry, can you just give me the question again so I don't go
So
off
basically, for an artist who's looking to be relevant or to cross over both, well, to be relevant in both mainstream and Christian, and not just to say, oh, I'm releasing music in these genres, but I'll actually want to be relevant and present and impactful in both genres. Because, you know, we talked about crossing over, but more so on the releases and music, but more so in the question now is to specifically to being present in both genres and being relevant and impactful in both genres. So advice that you'd give to an artist looking to kind of have their hands in both pies in a way.
Okay. It's very interesting. I couldn't take away from
doing it, so exactly.
I couldn't take away from anything everyone said already, and I think it's fantastic. And I will just add this: I think the truth is that not everybody can.
That's a good answer.
The truth is that not everybody can. So once you get to the bottom of that, it makes it much easier to navigate. Not everybody's meant to be in both arenas. You know what I mean? Some people do not have the I don't know what the word is. I won't say creativity, but the ability to talk to people about God in a language that they will understand. They can only talk to them in a way that other Christians will understand. And it's about the awareness that that's not a bad thing to speak to Christians. Like Triple was saying earlier, some people have an amazing way of talking to people who are not Christians about God, and Christians can't stand them. So for them, they also can't exist in both. And these are real things. These are real things. So I think the biggest advice I can give to somebody, which just sounds really airy-fairy and stuff, but it's honest. Be true to yourself. Like, I'm able to coexist in both because I've been influenced by both genuinely. When I was 14, 15, I was at my friend's house after school, learning to DJ, mixing UK garage. That's my era. So I could go into any Back to 95 rave right now and bust it up. Many Christians won't get that. A lot of them will, but they won't tell you because it exposed where they were at the time. But do you see what I mean? It's like, that's my genuine, that's part of who I am. So I'm able to do that. If that's not who you are, there's no problem with that. It's just really understanding who you are and being true to yourself. Not many people manage to do it. Somebody like Kirk, I mean, we use him a lot because he's got to be, for me, he might have to be number one all time, you know. He's got to, because he keeps finding ways to be Kirk, but there's no one who doesn't love Kirk when you think about it. Some people say they can't stand him, but they all know all of his bangers. They'll comment on it, but they know all of the tracks. He was on the Stellars the other day. Sorry, was it not the Stellars? He was on the BT Awards with Little Baby, and then Little Baby was in another track with some other people doing some next not Christian stuffs. So it's like it's only Kirk that can do that stuff, but he's still Kirk. No one calls Kirk to do foolishness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'll leave that there.
Yeah, no, and I think again, I was going to wrap it up, but I think it just the Kirk example you've given just reminds us of Christ, because Christ was the one who ate with sinners, and again at the time it would have been frowned upon, but then he knew who he was, and so he knew that sitting with sinners was nothing on him. It was not going to do anything to him because he knew who he was, and so it kind of boils down to the two things for me that are very poignant from today's conversation are: make excellent music, whatever it is, whatever sound it is, whatever genre, whatever, hopefully not label, because we want to try and do away with labels and just bring excellence to the table. But equally, whether you're in the Christian / gospel genre or in the mainstream genre, be true to yourself, particularly if you're trying to kind of cross over. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's been nearly an hour and a half, and I think there's a question. Okay, no, it's just somebody's just validating what you just said. So we don't have any more questions, but there's a lot of comments going on YouTube particularly. Thanks for engaging, for those who are on YouTube and Facebook, and for spending an hour and a half of your Thursday evening with us. I'm just glad England's not playing today. I was just praying, Lord, let there not be an England match today. Otherwise, no one's going to be watching.
Yeah, it would have been peak.
It would have been rubbish. I would just be here talking to myself. But no, still, you guys sacrificed your evening.
We would have been on this Zoom like, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been. One last question. I would have been distracted as well, to be honest. Yesterday was nail biting, but let's see what Sunday brings. Hopefully, bring it home, and even if not, we'll take second place, which is way better than we've done in like 60 odd years or something. So but no, thank you so much for hanging with me, and I'm gonna let you go. For those who've been on Facebook and YouTube, thanks again for for connecting. You can still share the link to this video with anyone who's a creative, an artist, Christian, gospel, or even not Christian. There's been so many. This is episode 8, and we've had so many insightful knowledge and information packed episodes on different topics to do with music business. Today's topic was more so leaning to the ministry side and how we can balance our presence in both Christian and mainstream spaces. So I'm hoping that you've been able to take something away from today's conversation. Next week we have the 9th episode of Equilibrium Live. We're going to 10 episodes, after which I will focus squarely on promoting my new album, which is out on the 30th of July. Go pre-order it everywhere. Thank you very much. Cheap plug. But no, I'm doing 10. Yeah, thanks. So we're going to go next week. We're going to be talking about the indie hustle and the realities of the indie hustle. I'm going to have some independent artists and some industry experts as well. And I think it's going to be one to bring your notepad and your pen to, as you do. So thanks a lot for hanging with me, Sarah Téibo, and with my guests, O, WIZDOM, and AYCE. You guys have been amazing, and you've been just, you just brought all the knowledge. So I'm really humbled and grateful that you've spent your time with us this evening. Until next week, guys, stay safe and keep yourself informed. God bless.